In today's video, I'm going to show you how to grow one of the most popular herbs of all time, mint, without letting it take over your garden. I have a ton of different varieties of mint in this raised bed, which I'm excited to share with you. But first, just a couple quick tips on Medicare. It's a simple plant to grow. You want ample light, not too much though. It can be in a little bit of shade. You want a moist soil that is rich in organic matter. The real one thing you can do wrong with mint as far as its care goes is just letting the soil dry out. There's these rhizomes in there. There's roots in there. It tends to want a lot of water. It's a fast growers or just don't let it dry out. And now let's go through a little bit of the history of this plant and some of the coolest varieties you can grow. So mint is a fascinating plant. Its origins are somewhat unknown. It's kind of all around the world now, and no one can really trace it down to one particular location. One thing that's crazy about it is while there are tons of different varieties, which I'll mention in a second, they all share the same stem characteristic. So here's a couple of varieties that I personally like, some classics. This one, Spearmint, the classic one that you can find in a gum. What's interesting about this one is you can't really grow it from seed. It must be propagated vegetative, which I'll show you in a second. You've got peppermint here. That's just an absolute classic. And then here's an example of one a little bit overgrown, if I do say so. This is pineapple mint, and it really does have that scent. There's also apple mint, orange mint, chocolate mint, all sorts of different types that really do smell the way that they're named, not necessarily taste. If you go out to the store, I might have 5 or 10 different varieties of mint popping in all over the garden. And they grow particularly well in containers, which I'm going to show you right now. So here is a pretty neglected pot of mint. You can see it probably was nice and bushy at some point in the past, but now it's kind of scraggly and just some outskirts of little cuttings here that have tried to survive. So what we're going to do is a full-on reset. You can see this pot's even a little bit broken here. The roots are trying to come out. So what we want to do is you might have to massage this out just a bit. Let's get it out here. All right, this is a little more stuck in than we thought, isn't it, guys? What mint wants to do is run, and if you don't let it run, you end up getting a situation where maybe it's even the mint that caused that crack in that pot because it really wants to go. So this is really tight in here. As you can see here, the rhizomes, they want to run. They want to produce more mint. And then there's just some normal roots as well. So this is where you got to get a little brutal, and you really don't need to be afraid whatsoever. You can take scissors, you can take shears, whatever. I'm going to take a little small handsaw and actually just cut this apart. Because what's crazy about mincing containers is it really does tend to displace the soil. So as you can see, this was obviously once full of soil. But if we cut this in half, yeah, there's soil in here for sure, but there's also a ton of root mass. And so let's say I wanted for new mint plants. Well, that's very easy. I'll just cut this into quarters here. Cut this one right here. What I can do is kind of tease this apart as well. I can kind of hack off the bottom. We don't really need that stuff down there. We still have some mint going up top. I can pull out some of these at least. All we need is this much. That's really it. And then if we were to take this and put it back up in a fresh pot of soil, in fact, we could probably even use some of this stuff here now that it's been freed of the mint mayhem. But what you would do is just reset into a new container, pop it in, just like this, put some soil around it, and you're good to go. And you could do this with this mint, whatever. So this is a good way to reset an overgrown mint container. And today, we're going to be talking about propagating mint. So what you're going to need is a clip, a knife, something like that, a nice pot of soil or multiple pots. And if you want also, you can just use a cup of water. So the first thing we're going to do is come into the mint, and we're going to just look for a nice branch that we don't mind slipping away. So I'm going to come in here, And what you want to get is a branch that has multiple leaf nodes, because what we're going to do is actually strip off those leaves. And I'll talk a little bit about why we're doing that. The other option you do have is actually to dig around the plant, but I'm going to bring the camera in closer and show you what I'm talking about. What we want to do is get in close to where the plant is actually contacting the soil. And we're going to, in particular, look at this section right here where we have multiple branches making contact with the soil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and clip where I see the start of this, and we'll take a closer look. So that's exactly what I was thinking. This actually has roots. There's a couple of little roots hanging out, and these roots are totally fine to transplant now. There's a good shot, so you can actually just shove this in a pot of soil, which we're going to do right now, where you can see on the example that I actually clipped from the ground, is that the roots are coming out where the leaf nodes are. So what we want to do is take a section of mint that has multiple leaf nodes, and we're going to actually strip those leaves off by just simply running our fingers down. So now at any one of these points where the leaves originally were can now produce roots. Cup of water, throw the cutting in. After maybe a week, you'll start seeing little roots, and in 2 weeks or so, you'll start seeing much more roots. And at that point, you could just transplant it out. So that's option 1. That's the easiest. The other option you have is to take some soil and just directly grow your plant. It's the same principle. You want to take a section of plant. Now go ahead and trim that and find where there's a leaf, not strip the leaves off. You can even go back a couple, and you have a few options here. You could just shove it in the pot, keep it somewhere semi-shaded, and make sure it gets enough moisture, and that will produce roots. The other option you have is that you could also just lay it down in some soil like this. Take a little extra, bury it, and that's really all there is to it. You can just let that sit, and a couple of weeks' time, this will start producing roots, and these pots, you'll be able to see them coming out the side. At that point, you can really just plant it up, and that's as easy as it is for man propagation. If you want to control your mint, the only foolproof way is to force it to grow in something like this where it can't spread just a classic container. So here's a mint that we have, it's not too root bound. This is something that you might find at the local nursery. And when you're putting it up from what you buy at the nursery, it spreads so quickly that I would say, typically when you pot up a houseplant, you say, oh, you pot it up an inch bigger than the pot it's already in with mint. You could go a little bit larger. This is just about at that inch point. So what I would do is I would just scratch the sides up just a little bit, just to kind of loosen the root matter. It really does get crazy with mint. You would not believe how fast it can tangle itself up. So you want to open it up a little bit and then just pop it in. And what you'll do is take some potting soil and just backfill around this. And this will grow like this for pretty much an entire season. And then you get into some of the propagation techniques that help you take one mint plant and either turn it into many or reset it when it outgrows this pot and start the process all over again or back out here in this front mint. And when you harvest, you want to cut right above a leaf node because you're going to get branching out both sides. So I can also sort of landscape and prune this mint at the same time that I'm harvesting. It's a great time because the aromatics are high right before noon, so you kind of get it at its peak freshness. So I'm taking a few sprigs there that's going to force this to push up quite a bit. And I want to clean up some of these other ones here too, and then we can talk about some of the uses for mint. If you want to know how to grow avocado, please visit our YouTube channel and watch our previous video.